Everyone, and welcome to the Amplitude of Tech podcast. I'm Shawn, Chief Marketing Officer of Amplix. This is the Inside Amplix edition of the podcast. What does that mean? We're going to bring you thought leadership from Amplix employees, actionable intel and insights that we've learned by doing thousands and thousands of technology transformation projects. Hope you enjoy the episode. All right, Dan Gill, welcome to the Amplitude of Tech podcast, the Inside Amplix edition. You're the first episode of this edition, so welcome to the podcast. Can you just give the audience a little bit of background info about who you are and what you do at Amplix?
Awesome. Thanks, Shawn. Hopefully I set the bar high here as the first Inside Amplix. So Dan Gill, CEO here at Amplix, was part of the founding team here back in 2022 and was part of one of the founding organizations, ROI Communications, prior to that. And about 30 years total in technology, both on the vendor side and the advisory and services side.
Awesome. So you're a very client-facing CEO. I think you spend quite a bit of your time out there talking to end users as well as, spearheading our M&A activity, or at least being involved in our M&A activity. So you're seeing the industry from a lot of different perspectives. And I was hoping that maybe you could just kind of talk about what you're seeing in the industry. What are some key trends that keep popping up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can say AI, right? Like nobody talks about that, but
Episode over.
yeah. So I'm going to circle back to that. I think, broadly we're seeing, the macroeconomic environment has been a bit volatile. So we're seeing a lot of folks really focused on efficiency, cost efficiency around services that they have today, cost efficiency around modernizations that they want to do in parts of their infrastructure so they can get away from some technical debt and get into places where they have more cost certainty over time. So that's been one general theme. The modernization has been tied to both that and getting ready for AI. Where do I need to have my plumbing, so to speak, underneath ready so that I can use these really incredible AI applications and opportunities on top of it? And then align with that, the security posture. So the threat vectors are changing so rapidly. Bad actors are using AI. And there's a lot of concern, particularly in the mid-market and small enterprise that don't have massive teams to deal with this stuff, about being prepared and being ready to deal with that change and the rapid escalation of those threats. So those are the three things we're talking to people the most about.
And when you say people are pursuing cost savings, is it a war chest kind of situation where they're just trying to keep that money to the side, or are they looking to reinvest that in the modernization so they can prepare for AI, which probably will lead eventually to cost savings somewhere?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. In war chest it's more about, look, I've got a finite budget. Maybe I've been asked to return 10 or 15 or 20% in the next fiscal year because the business as a whole needs to right size a bit around cost and wants to protect resources. So it's more about, one, how do I do that? Like, how do I meet this request from the business? How do I protect my people resources by finding some efficiency in my technology spend? And then how do I fund the stuff I really want to do that's not in my new budget? So I think it's really a combination of those three things. I don't see it as like a grab to drive profitability. It's more about, right-sizing cost and then trying to find ways to fund innovative projects that maybe you can't incrementally increase the budget to do.
What are some low-hanging fruit areas that you're seeing clients look in the stack to look for savings?
Yeah, so anything communications and infrastructure related is a great place, right? So your telephony and network infrastructure, if a company has purchased that on their own or even through other partners, we're typically able to find significant double-digit savings for them. And it's really a combination of having the data and benchmarking and expertise to help you get to an optimum number there. So think that telephony and network, mobility, or wireless spend, those are areas that are very much low-hanging fruit, very easy to audit and find savings, very easy to deliver those savings in a short period of time. The other is around cloud. So certainly, folks have moved lots of workloads to the clouds or want to move more workloads to the clouds, to the cloud. And they've seen that the cost sometimes is a little more than they expected, or maybe they've got a data science team that's using the cloud and some hosted databases, and the costs are quite high and higher and escalating more than they thought. Mostly because the platforms are built to help you scale, not optimize cost. And so we've seen a real big opportunity around FinOps or financial operations within cloud and hosted database spend, deliver very meaningful results in as little as 60 or 90 days, where you can suck, again, double digit cost out of that your existing infrastructure without a migration with the right type of services involved.
If you watch the media talk about
Mhm.
AI, you often hear about the job apocalypse that's
Yeah.
coming. Are you seeing a lot of labor reduction?
So I think it's been more about labor force multiplying, right? That was a really awkward turn of phrase, but it's really been about how do I make my team and my processes and my systems more valuable and more efficient and deliver more for the customers versus, how do I remove labor? For a lot of the companies we work with, especially the ones that are growing, it's, headcount avoidance versus reduction, I
Mm.
think is more common. Look, AI is like a phase of the industrial revolution, right? And every phase creates pressure on certain parts of the job economy and creates new opportunities in the job economy, right? And so we're seeing that there may be changes on one side related to the labor, but there's new opportunities for those who understand how to wield these type of technologies, how to manage them, how to implement them, how to maintain them, how to use them, and how to better evaluate a process and tweak that process and then use automation on the other side. And when we talk to financial leaders, and other folks, it has been more about scaling more efficiently, getting more out of the existing than it's been, hey, just go reduce workforce. One exception could be in the contact center where you do see a shift into interaction types to certain AI driven applications. But what's interesting there is the remaining interactions that humans are going to handle are actually going to be the most valuable ones. And so there's still plenty of opportunity there for both a combination of human and technology.
Absolutely. Have you seen a shift in the conversations that you're having with clients over the past 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so I think it's good to circle back on the AI topic. And so, 6 to 12 months ago it was okay, I need to be thinking about this. Maybe some folks are out there doing some things inside my organization and I'm still trying to figure it out, to now it's like I have to do something. I have to deliver results to my C suite and my board or I'm going to have a problem. And I'm facing the reality of I've got multiple things already going on in my organization. I have Shadow AI, which is the new version of Shadow IT, where folks are off on their own with their own personal tools, doing things to make themselves more effective and productive and having a better quality of work experience. Then I've got sanctioned pilots, right? Where maybe we've taken Claude or ChatGPT Enterprise or, what have you. And I've got certain groups experimenting to try to figure out what we should be doing, where we can find opportunity in the business. I've hopefully got, and if I haven't, I need to start a plan around governance and data strategy that's going on within my IT and compliance leadership to figure out, make sure we have the right policies in place and make sure we have a data infrastructure that supports really good results. And so all of that's complex and it takes a lot of work. But that's all going on now in a lot of places. And sometimes in a very well thought out planned way, and a lot of times in a scrambling, I have a lot of pressure on me to do something kind of way. And so we've been spending a lot of time, as recently, we had a big tech leader conference the other day down in Cape Cod, all about this. And the conversations were really interesting around not just, hey, I need to do something in AI, but hey, what's the right governance philosophy and methodology to get that in place? How do I classify and architect my data so that I can actually get value from this and I can protect data that I need to protect and I can enable people with data to do their jobs better? And then, okay, great. Now I've got that. How do I evaluate my processes to make sure I'm not automating something that's broken, right? We don't need to be faster at bad, right? So AI is actually a great catalyst for just business process improvement and evaluating the way we do things and then figuring out where to automate and create efficiency. So we heard a lot of the senior practitioners talk about that as a part of this. And then it's going to be, okay, how do I implement and manage this?
Mm.
Do I have the team in house? Do I need to look at my service provider partners that I have today? Do I need to find a new service provider type? most businesses are not Fortune 100 folks that can hire an army of folks to come in and do all these things. They're going to need some help. And we heard that a lot last week about where do we find help? How do we evaluate the help to get us to where we want to go so that we don't have a bunch of half finished pilots and projects that are never operationalized.
One of the things that I've observed, actually, two things I've observed is kind of a shift in the conversation going from LLMs and generative AI to agentic
Uh-huh.
AI. Um, and I think we've also seen a shift from the buy to the build. It was a lot easier to buy AI products and say you're dabbling in AI and be able
Right.
to word up the chain that you've got an AI plan, or at least you're in the game. But now we're starting to see more businesses build their own pilots. So can you talk about those two angles? Like what are you seeing on the ground level?
Yeah. I think we're going to continue to see both
Mm,
because there are certain areas where there's established kind of off the shelf applications like customer experience or the things the CRM vendors are doing, where it makes sense to take advantage of things people have built into the environment to do IVA work or agent assist or conversational intelligence. Like there's a very wide range of really good vendors with great solutions. But I think when you start thinking about operational processes and workflows and things, those are unique to a business and unique to a company. And the tool set that's now emerged and the ease of use and how quickly you can move on things, there are things that make sense to enable on your own, but as long as you can integrate it with the larger systems infrastructure and things that you're doing. And we found that ourselves internally, right? We've got our baseline IT platform, which is both CRM and customer facing application for us. And we found with some of these AI tools, we can build really compelling integrations for some new automated workflows and processes that we're going to create with our existing systems infrastructure with baseline or NetSuite or some of the other systems that we use. And so it makes sense for us to build out some of that stuff where it's unique to us, but it'll always be in mind of integrating with the overall systems infrastructure.
yeah. So you mentioned the conference. Was there anything that stood out as particularly surprising or particularly validating that you heard at that event?
Yeah, I would say more validating that people were thinking more deeply or thinking deeply around the data, the governance, and the operationalizing of things. And it's good to see people moving that fast to that area because I think there's been a lot of negative, there's been some negative press around, hey, some percentage of pilots always fail according to AI pilots are failing according to MIT, or this is a struggle. And it's not about the technology or the promise of the technology. It's can you operationalize what the opportunity is? And it was really great to hear, senior leaders from, very large enterprises talking about how well they've progressed their thinking around the things that allow them to operationalize this and have repeatable delivery to the bottom line of the business.
One thing that surprised me was the surprise from the audience when we talked about AI risks. It was notable to me that the conversations I had afterwards were people saying, wow, I'm scared. How do I sleep at night now?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Why? I think inherently people should know that there's risk to AI, right? So where do you think that surprise comes from? Where's the disconnect?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's probably from a lack of time to think deeply about it,
Mm,
right? There's pressure from boards and C-suites to go do things. And some of it, there's probably an inherent thought of, well, if they're telling me to do this, it must be okay.
mm,
Right. And it's something I need to figure out. And then it's just moving fast. Like this changes every day. Understanding the risks and threat vectors around it are changing every week, every month. It's hard to keep on top of that.
mm,
And then, I think some of it is just time, like time to sit back and think about it, time to reach out to an advisor or a service provider or partner that can help you think about it versus trying to figure it out yourself. That's part of it too. Like none of us individually can understand all of this,
mm.
right? There's a need for collective thought and support through these processes. And so, yeah, there's things they probably didn't think of that we illuminated in the event. We had some really compelling cyber security veterans and speakers, and they're always good at kicking up a few nerves with the facts of what's going on. So I think some of it probably caught people off guard because there were places they just hadn't thought to look or think.
I was having drinks this weekend at a nice restaurant in my area here, and I ended up talking to a guy next to me, and he owns a specialized medical device manufacturing organization. You'll be happy to know I got his number, and I'll be nurturing that as best I can. But um, so what was interesting to me, he's an engineer by trade as well as he runs the business. And he was telling me about how he's using AI and he's dumping IP patent into a public instance of ChatGPT. And he didn't understand the inherent risks of doing something like that. So the question that I have for you is, what is the role of a technology leader educating the rest of the business about using shadow AI applications?
Yeah, I mean, that risk conversation is important, and they need to be able to filter that through the rest of the organization so that people we're not saying you're not saying don't do something. You're saying have a plan and do it in this way so that we can mitigate risk and get ourselves more likely to get to a good result. And there's a give and take with the IT leaders executives that are asking them to do things where they have to be able to talk about those risks without feeling like a roadblock to progressing the business, right? That's a delicate thing. That's not easy to do because you've got someone at a senior level that might not understand all the risks, but understands the potential revenue and EBITDA opportunity around something and is pushing hard. And you don't want to be the thought of as like the leader that's the roadblock or the stop sign for everything. You want to be an innovator too, right? But you owe it to the organization to make sure everybody understands where there's risk. I think it starts with having a good governance policy that you train people on, that you deliver. You don't just send a Word doc. Like you deliver it, you train people on it, you make sure they understand it. You have office hours and Q&A opportunities to make sure people understand what the risks are and what our governance is as a business and how we're going to approach this. Because I think once proper expectations and education's done, people generally want to do the right thing for their business. Like it's not nobody's looking to create risk for their organization. They just want to get better and or deliver more value to a client, get better at what they do, help their teammates more. And so it's a delicate conversation for a technology leader because you have to make sure the organization is protected, but you can't be perceived as the roadblock to innovation because that's not a great long-term career
Yeah.
situation.
I can remember when social media first became a thing. I was working for a big company and IT locked down access to social media, and they would not hear a use case from marketing about why we should be able to access it. And they became a roadblock, and we just went right around them. And so
Yeah.
we're doing it in a way that was probably more risky for the business because we weren't allowed to do it the correct channel. So
Yeah.
I agree from learning from history, you don't want to be that person.
No, no, and I think it's, and of course, that's not happening here at Amplix. We know
No.
that, but of
Yes.
course not. And it's important for the IT leaders to figure that out. And luckily, the tools are progressing very quickly, where
Mm.
you can get to enterprise versions of these tools that are very locked down, or and are as secure as what you would expect from SaaS applications that are enterprise grade. They're very quickly getting there. So luckily, there's some options to steer people where you can say, hey, and they're fairly cost effective. And so you can steer people to say, look, if you're going to do it this way, right? And this is how and this is what we've enabled for you
Yeah.
to be able to do. And I think the practitioners have to scramble to enable because if they don't, there already is shadow AI. And to pull that out of the shadows and eliminate more of it down the road, they have to move quickly.
Yeah, I read an article I think it was on ciodive.com recently, and they were saying one of the key metrics that you should look for as a technology leader is adoption of the AI tools that you did implement and make accessible to people. Because if adoption is actually low, they're probably using AI applications that you don't know
Yeah.
about.
No, absolutely. That's an important metric. Both from that perspective and a cost perspective, right?
Mhm.
There's a whole new thing around expense management related to AI that's going to emerge as a critically important thing, just like FinOps for cloud, particularly because you got licensing costs and variable costs. And so, that's one of the things we're talking to customers about. You can't just do it. Like you have to have a plan,
Yeah.
start to finish, including how you manage the expense around it.
And it's hard to predict what those costs are going to be. And on top of that, the underlying financial structure from the vendors that you're using, it's not guaranteed that that's not going to change. We've already seen it with Anthropic and Claude, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so let's open the aperture a little bit. It doesn't have to be just about AI, but what are you seeing that clients continually get wrong?
That's a good question. I think it's thinking about the full life cycle of something as you're going into it and who's going to support you and help you at every step of the way. And I think clients will often be reacting to a need and they'll move very quickly. And then as they go through it, it becomes apparent, like, I'm going to need help in all these different areas. And I end up with kind of a disjointed set of people that help me with part of a process instead of helping me through the whole process, or assuming that folks internally will figure out something that maybe they haven't done before, right? If you're doing something transformational, you might not have folks on the team that have done that particular project or setting. And so it's just making sure you've got the right group put together internally and externally to have success, and really be thoughtful in your requirements and how you think about what you're trying to accomplish.
Would you say that's also why having someone like Amplix in an advisory role is more important than ever now?
Yeah, look, the pace of change is only increasing each year across all layers of technology and infrastructure. It's not almost impossible to have a big enough team with enough experience and enough track record to know everything. And any individual company is never going to have all the pricing benchmarks, the performance benchmarks, those things. So when you have access to folks that have done thousands of times the thing that you're trying to do once and is super important to the company, and have benchmarks and data points and vendor leverage and all of those things, it's just a much more likely path to a positive outcome. And look, to be frank, there's a lot of decisions that get made with a Google search and now a AI search to get in a Gartner Magic Quadrant peak to get to 3 or 4 vendors, and then the best salesperson wins.
Mm,
And sometimes that gets you the right outcome, but a lot of times it doesn't. And it certainly doesn't get you to optimize terms and flexibility and things for the business. And so our thought on this is it's okay to get help as long as it's complementary help. Like, we don't try to replace what someone does. We try to make it better, right? As a force multiplier. And I think there's enough of firms like us out there now that as a technology leader, you have resources to help you make better decisions and get value more quickly. Why not?
absolutely. What's one thing that's going to look very different 12 months from now?
So Shawn, it's an interesting question because the pace of change with AI is so fast.
Hmm.
Like, I could be lazy and say everything. No, I'm serious. Like, you could,
Probably the
like,
right answer.
and I think the way people think about deploying and managing new technology is going to look a lot different today. I think there's still a lot of, like, do this ourselves, figure it out ourselves, do it internally. And I
Mhm.
think the pace related to AI is going to make it clear that you need help, and that, I think you're going to see a lot of development in the managed services, the MSP world, to help try to support these AI initiatives. And I think you're going to see a lot more people leaning externally for some help because of the pace of change
Mhm.
and the inability to keep up on their own.
Last question. What would you say
Mhm.
to a technology leader that is listening to this and thinks that they might be a step or two behind?
Yeah, I think if you think you're a step or two behind, it's okay. There's a lot of people who are steps behind. It's really more just, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do next, right? If you think you're a step behind, why? And what does it mean to be a step behind? And what would it mean to be a step ahead?
Mm,
Right. And then work back from once you have a case around that, why you need to be a step ahead instead of a step behind, know that there's help. There's people that have done this many times that it can help you fast forward that progress. And that sometimes if you're second or third mover, you learn from mistakes. So
mhm,
before you beat yourself up, recognize it as an opportunity to say, okay, I'm a little late here, but now I can learn from all the best practices and I can probably move quicker. And then I don't want to be behind next time. So I'm going to move quicker, and then I'll figure out how to innovate and get a step ahead on the other side. So that challenge is just an opportunity.
Great advice. If someone listening to this decides that they're interested in getting some help, how can they reach you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm always available, and it's really simple. Just dg@amplix.com. You can
Awesome.
get me through the website, or you can reach out to me via email. I'm accessible to everyone.
All right. Dan Gill, thanks for your time and expertise. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Shawn.